Good morning, Council. The meeting is now called to order. For those of you around the table, please turn on your microphone when you are speaking. For those participating in the room and via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or items that are under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white speaker request card to speak located on the information table in the hallway and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table in the hallway. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will go through the list of members alphabetically. Please unmute and indicate if you are present. Mayor Beck. Mayor Bien Wilner.
Here.
Thank you. President Burnett. Mayor Crane.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Daniels. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gallego.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Giles. Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Here.
Thank you. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Lavalde.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Governor Roe Lewis. Mr. Meck.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Molina. Mayor Morris.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Peterson. Mayor Pizzillo.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez. Mayor Schultz.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Sellers.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Sykes.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Smith. Thank you. Mayor Walter. Mayor Wires.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss. Mayor Wheatley.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods.
Here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll next move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise if you are able. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Our next item is call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. Comments that cannot be accommodated within the 15-minute time period will be distributed to the committee and included in the formal meeting minutes. We have received several comments today, and we'll begin with Diane Barker in person.
Good afternoon, Mayor Gallego and mayors. I'm Diane Barker and I reside downtown Phoenix and really enjoying this beautiful morning. I thought it's a multimodal day. I was over at the Board of Supervisors and I'd like to pass this information because in maybe your areas, you're going to get revenue bonds for water and irrigation. Water's so important in this current topic. But the board's going to have they approved this today, 4 mail ballot elections in Fountain Hills, in Magna Irrigation, wherever that is, Tonto Hills, and Paloma. And so, I just reminded the board that I did look under the state law, which is the title 48 for these elections, and the board is governing this. And then it goes by state law 16, which is the conduct of the elections, and was looking to see that everything's on the up and up and we have the counting right. And like this, And in the manual, it showed that there's an oath of office, which I would imagine, and if you haven't, please do so, an oath of office that you serve your public, you're serving the people under the Constitution. This area's gotten way, 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 for many of us that are citizens too, divided politically. So I'm reminding you that it's a conscientious, ever-going oath. And so let's skip over to like the topic of the day, which is 400. And I know you're all wanting to get that passed, or I presume, Mag, most of you are. You know, it has its faults. It's very contentious, you know, out at the legislature. And I've read this, maybe you could pick this up on some of the arguments. But basically what I see is, because I'm multimodal and I do use the bus, bicycle, light rail. Occasionally I ride in a car. People are riding the buses, but when they're doing the planning, like this afternoon, capital extension for the light rail, Mr. Crawley today at the Board of Supervisors pointed out he didn't see any platform that would connect with the bus. All of this transportation needs to connect. If you're out there and you're a regular user, it's, you know, kind today, but it won't be that way. That is wrong to make the public be in areas where they can have some shade. And also you should outlaw any smoking, not only on the platform, but there's smoking also in the cars and at the bus shelters. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via our website 1 hour prior to the meeting. Kelly will read those comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Regional Council. Our first comment comes from Susan Wood of Scottsdale. Begin comment. As members of MAGS, you must stand up against the federal government's Green Deal policies. These standards are impossible to meet. I oppose the policy of banning gas-powered vehicles and any action to adopt punitive ozone control measures. End comment. Next comment comes from Charles Wood of Scottsdale. Begin comment. Dear council members, I am opposed to your draft list of measures to reduce ozone. You must not let the federal government dictate the policies in our state. Just say no to the federal dollars for road diets and bike lane projects. There is an agenda to remove car lanes and replace them with bike lanes. People in Arizona are not going to ride bikes in 115 degrees. And bus travel is not feasible for older adults when temperatures are above 100 degrees. The Vision Zero scam was devised to make streets safer, but in many cities, the results have been just the opposite. The Safe Streets agenda is the leftist dream to control the population with high-density apartments and a war on cars. Stop the insanity, keep Arizona free from federal regulations, and say no to federal dollars, which always come with strings attached. End comment. The next comment is from Heather Turley of Mesa. Begin comment. Members of the MAG Regional Council, thank you for hearing my comments today. I like to try to stay up to date on local news. Recently, I have seen quite a few articles about a tax extension for transportation called Prop 400. There was even an interview on AZ Family with Dennis Welch and a state senator a couple weeks ago that I watched and I found particularly interesting. This interview seemed to focus on two things. The state senator wanted to talk about how much money would go to roads and freeways as opposed to transit like light rail. And Dennis Welch seemed to only want to focus on sending whatever plan you all here at Maricopa Association of Governments put together to voters. I found myself agreeing with the state senator as he substantiated his points with actual fact. And it made me want to speak to you all today and offer you this feedback. As a voter and taxpayer in Maricopa County, I want to see my money used to repair and expand our roadways. I truly believe that the majority of people in our county do as well. Though I don't find myself traveling all over the county frequently, I definitely see the benefit of investing in regional infrastructure. At some point, I will use this network to travel to Phoenix or the West Valley or all the way to San Diego or to Mexico. I appreciate that. But I will never ever use a light rail or bus service. While I don't mind a small percentage of my tax dollars being used to subsidize some public transit, specifically buses, I think light rail is wasteful and ruins our roads and majority inconveniences driving. I also think taxpayers in Phoenix, Mesa, and Tempe should pay for their light rail if they insist on having such an obviously outdated form of transportation. I don't know what will ultimately happen with this Prop 400 business, But if I get an opportunity to vote for it, I will not support something that overemphasizes public transit over basic improvements to the roads and freeways most of us rely on. Thank you for your consideration and for allowing my input on this important topic. End comment. Next comment comes from Sean Smith of the United States. Begin comment. Hello, members of the MAG Regional Council. I would like to ask you why you are not looking at the entire picture when it comes to the ozone and air quality. We all know that there are various factors that contribute to this issue. There are factors that are out of control of the people of Arizona. What other states or countries need to get their own selves in order. We need to make sure we are not misrepresenting information to the people. The people are the real ones who should be in charge. There was a meeting with the legislature in MAG around 3 weeks ago. When addressing air quality, the representative from MAG could not even tell the legislature how much it was going to cost to implement their suggested recommendations or how much it would actually help. It was absolutely crazy. Who thinks this is a logical way to implement changes, not knowing the facts before plans are rolled out and drastic changes made? And to top it off, MAG suggested getting rid of the internal combustion engine by 2035. No, thank you. Leave the ludicrous California policies over in California. Now let's start looking at the facts and not the chicken little like so many have done before. Please put policies in place that support the vast majority of the people, and that is to drive their cars. Stop with the madness. Thank you. End comment. The next comment comes from Kevin Gallagher of Gilbert. I'm opposed to any type of fixed rail systems. My experience in San Jose and other communities is they are not utilized and are a burden to taxpayers. Developers overinflate numbers and the reality never matches. San Jose returns 9% of its operating costs. Most efficient public transportation is a bus that can go everywhere cars can go. Improve roads and you improve your public transportation system too. End comment. Next comment is from Leslie Nix. Big comment. Regional Council, I'm writing today to study by the Arizona Free Enterprise on Maricopa County's transportation plan. In his analysis, transportation scholar Randall O'Toole determined that MAG failed to employ the most basic rational planning process, which requires developing a wide range of alternatives, evaluating those alternatives, and monitoring their implementation. This abdication of the rational planning process is even more confounding post-COVID pandemic, which radically changed travel behaviors and highlights that MAG was more interested in pushing an agenda than devising transportation policies that could respond to real-world problems and withstand objective scrutiny. The data in this study should help inform lawmakers' decisions regarding formulated transportation funding and policy in Maricopa County going forward. The full study can be found here, azfree.org/WP content /uploads/2023/03/review of the MAG Prop 400 Transportation Plan Brochure.pdf. I urge the council to read this detailed report before making any decision. Thank you. End comment. Next comment is from Cindy McKnight of Mesa, Arizona. Begin comment. Members of the MAG Regional Council, a central problem with MAG's current transportation plan proposal is that it was entirely put together during COVID, a time when our day-to-day lives were completely upended and travel of all kinds came to a halt. The multi-year COVID response has in some respects made permanent changes in the travel habits of Arizonans. While commuters have completely returned to their cars, the same cannot be said about transit. The truth is transit ridership was on the decline for years leading up to the pandemic, and then it free fell from a cliff. Unlike drivers that were eager to get back behind the wheel of their cars, people just have not returned to their bus seats, trains, or trolleys, and there is no indication they ever will. This isn't unique to our community. Around the country, transit services are in a fiscal doom spiral as they face the same ridership woes. But from what I have seen, MAG wants to actually increase funding for transit in Maricopa County. The Prop 400 extension will be the largest investment in transportation for the next 2 decades. It must be grounded in reality, a post-COVID reality, and not on public transit pipe dreams. As drivers, including myself, has returned to the road, so too has congestion. MAG should prioritize projects that invest in the forms of transportation that people overwhelmingly and freely choose, their cars, not what MAG wants them to choose. We are in a post-pandemic world, and any transportation planning and spending should recognize that. End comment. Final comment comes from Kathleen Lyles of Mesa, Arizona. Good morning. Safety in the transportation network is important. MAG should reject any politically motivated agendas that seek to shape transportation planning and spending. Unfortunately, the discussion over road safety is plagued with politically motivated agendas and divisive ideas. We see signs for Vision Zero in Tempe, and in other cities, it's called Complete Streets or in your strategic transportation safety plan being revisited today, it is a safe systems approach. They all call for the same solutions: more bike lanes, sidewalks, narrowing roadways to put us on road diets, among other measures. Yesterday at MAG's Transportation Safety Committee, USDOT said their strategic transportation safety plan is Vision Zero. Streets Blog USA is an organization that covers the movement to end car dependence in the United States. They publish frequent articles on the Vision Zero movement with titles such as "How Does Toxic Masculinity Play Out on Our Roads and How Do We Stop It?" and "Slow Roll Chicago, Vision Zero Must Address Structural Racism as a Cause of Traffic Violence. Toxic masculinity and structural racism are not making our streets unsafe." A study published in the National Library of Medicine official website of the federal government, written by University of Arizona professors and local activist group Living Streets Alliance, is titled, quote, "Health Disparities, Transportation Equity, and Complete Streets, Study of a Policy Development Process Through the Lens of Critical Race Theory," unquote. The paper argues that complete streets policies offer a strategy to address inequities and subsequent public health outcomes. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg argued that roads are racist and need to be redesigned to provide equity and safety. Perhaps worst of all, the Vision Zero network links to partner organizations, one of which is the Untokening 1.0, which argues that oppressive systems such as ableism, toxic masculinity, and white supremacy undermine the free expression of marginalized communities and perpetuate narrow approaches to street safety that fuel inequities and exclusion and must be abolished. The truth is that many of the safe streets approaches appeal to emotion and sound good, but the approaches have been and continue to be influenced by political activists. Transportation safety should not be built on politically divisive ideologies. We can and should have safe streets that maintain and expand capacity so we can continue to drive our cars easily and conveniently. Thank you. End comment. Madam Chair, that concludes the online public comments received for call to the audience.
Thank you. We will now proceed to our next agenda item, Executive Director's Report number 4. Mr. Zerker.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Regional Council. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Skip Hall for the invitation for myself and MAG staff to come to Surprise and speak about air quality to his City Council in Surprise. Also, thanks yesterday to Supervisor Goodman, Mayor Wilson, Mayor Smith, and Vice Mayor Brown of Queen Creek for a meeting in Pinal County to talk about the growing transportation demands in Pinal, the Pinal County region of MAG. And so we'll continue to work closely with our member agencies there. Also in front of you today is an editorial that ran in today's Arizona Republic. It is online. It also appeared in this form in the hard copy paper for dinosaurs like me who still get the hard copy paper, but everybody can get this on this piece of outdated technology, the telephone. You can access it through your cell phone as well online. It's a good summation, and thanks to Mayor Weiss and Mayor Giles who took the time to speak with some editorial writers about that. One thing to update you on today is you're going to hear a little more from our staff later in the next slide, addressing unsheltered homelessness through new federal programs. I continue to hear from mayors about efforts going on. The Maricopa region was invited by the White House and the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness to participate in a program that's a first of its kind initiative to address unsheltered homelessness. Mayor Kay Gallego, Mayor John Giles, and Maricopa Board of Supervisors Chair Clint Hickman were part of that effort, which also ties into the MAG's Pathways Home program. One last thing just to note, next month is the last month in which Eric Anderson, Executive Director, will participate in these meetings as Executive Director. So after the June 28th, during the June 28th meeting, there'll be a time for recognition of Eric. And immediately after that will be a community reception where community partners and member agencies are invited to come and give their best to Eric as he launches into the next season of his life. You will receive a formal invitation to that in the coming days, but we just wanted to make that known to you here. It will be here in the MAG, on the second floor of the MAG office building. So with that, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you so much. Number 5, approval of the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5F are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on these items? Prior to the approval of the consent agenda, members of the public may comment on any items on the consent. So far, I have not received any requests to speak on this item. Staff, do we have any written comments for these items?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one written comment that was submitted for this agenda item.
Wonderful. We will now read the online comment.
Madam Chair, this comment comes to us from Catherine Atwood of the United States. Begin comment. Until recently, I had never even heard of the Maricopa Association of Governments, and I am confident no one else I know has. But I see on your agenda today a discussion on a public outreach report. Considering I had never heard of this organization and am more involved than most people I know, I wondered what kind of public outreach you have been doing. It turns out over the last year, you have received 30 comments from the public. When I look at your calendar, you have meetings almost every single day, but you have garnered less than one comment from the public a week. Additionally, it doesn't seem to me that the comments you did receive in any way represent the public accurately. Your public survey, which appears to have been open since July of last year, received only 178 responses. You ask questions like, how many days per week do you walk? This is an odd question considering almost everyone walks at least a little every day. But I suspect you use information like that to imply people are traveling by walking or biking based on other comments in the survey. I walk every day. I walk to my car to drive to work, and then I walk from my parking space into my office. So I might respond to the question, how many days per week do you walk, with 7, which would be honest, but I do not walk as a form of transportation every day. I drive my car like almost everyone else. This is not true public participation. End comment.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5F?
Second.
We have a motion from Mayor Smith and a second from Mayor Osborne. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will call the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Emercio.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I've missed? Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6 is moving forward on the work of addressing homelessness. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by MAG Regional Homeless Katie Gentry.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman and members of the Regional Council to provide an opportunity on our work to address homelessness. As Ed mentioned, we have been fast at work at many different things, and I'm happy to report back to you all on all of this work. Next slide. A quick overview of my presentation. I will talk through efforts from the continuum of care, talk through Pathways Home actions and the work that we are moving forward, and then talk through some next steps. Next slide. Next slide. In March of this year, we announced through a media press release, as well as emails to all of our constituents, that we received $36.3 million in funding. That was for 28 housing projects, as well as infrastructure. So our homeless management information system, coordinated entry, and planning. But as part of that, we received 2 new housing projects, which we're really excited to get off the ground. It was a rapid rehousing project for families, and then an expansion of rapid rehousing projects specifically for survivors of domestic violence. So really excited for both of those. Unfortunately, we did not receive the supplemental notice of funding opportunity, but we'll be pursuing additional funding opportunities with more to come with a submission in June, and anticipate that our annual notice of funding opportunity will come again this summer. Next slide. We also, as you may have heard, recently completed the point in time count in January. We released those results in April of this year. So I want to briefly touch on the results of the point in time count. Next slide. We saw an increase again this year up to 9,642 individuals, though 51% of those individuals are unsheltered, with 49% being sheltered. And the rise this year completely came from our sheltered. Many thanks to all of you and your jurisdictions for increasing the shelter capacity across the region. Next slide. So that total percent of rise over our 2022 numbers was a 7% increase, with all of that coming from our sheltered. And we are having conversations with you all and your staff as to how we are continuing to keep those sheltered ongoing as we see American Rescue Plan dollars coming to a close, but really understanding that our sheltered numbers are really important and that we still have a very vast majority of folks who are unsheltered and continuing to grow. Next slide. Want to highlight the work of Pathways Home. Next slide. This is a graph that I continue to show to you quarter over quarter, really highlighting the work of efforts being done and continuing to move items to green as we accomplish steps in the action plan, really in partnership with the local jurisdiction committee, which is made up of many of your staff. We are continuing to work through 2 different evaluations, refining the funding filter and working with partners on developing resources such as employment and prevention and diversion. Next slide. We are also releasing the public education campaign. Both a combination of the website has been released and a toolkit is upcoming. You'll hear more about that during your June meeting, but wanted to give you a sneak peek for what's to come. Home is Where It All Starts is live website, so you are more than welcome to visit it. In addition to increasing public education, we've also been increasing knowledge in the affordable housing space by hosting affordable housing webinars. We hosted one about 3 weeks ago now on May 2nd with almost 200 attendees and over 300 folks registered for that. And we have those recordings available on the Vitalist website. And we'll continue to be hosting these webinars, 2 more in 2023, one later this summer and one in the fall. Next slide. We also launched a progress snapshot update. This was included in your packet, and really it captures the success of the plan. So a lot of work has been done in this plan, and so we want you all to be able to continue to celebrate, but also know we have more to do. And so this is not only available for you all to share with others, but will be available on our website later this month. Next slide. Before I jump into housing targets, I wanted to briefly mention the continued increase in people experiencing homelessness. I know you all have continued to feel this, but we are seeing year over year a continued increase due to the constraints of our community, and more people are experiencing homelessness due to the economic impacts that are happening. So with that, I wanted to jump into the housing targets. Next slide. Our initial projections to reduce by 25% back in May of 2021 was 770 temporary housing units and 1,225 permanent housing units. As a result of these increases, the temporary housing number units have moved to 434 and 1,432 permanent housing units. However, both of these numbers are higher than last quarter, which we saw at 382 and 1,382 respectively, despite the work of local and tribal governments, because we're seeing more and more folks come into our system. And so we're having to respond and increase how many units in order to hit that projection of 25% reduction. On the last slide, I showed you how we look at these housing units through the through the homelessness trends report, and we're continuing to look at that quarter over quarter to say where our trends are going, and working with your local and tribal government staff to say how do we stop the folks who are coming in. So whether that is diversion and prevention, but also understanding that we have to have a breadth of resources across our continuum of housing solutions. Next slide. So I want to briefly touch on next steps. We're continuing to dive into the funding questions specifically as American Rescue Plan dollars are closing, and discussion around how do we continue to keep the breadth of resources that we have available, but also increase resources, knowing that homelessness is just continuing to increase. We are also continuing to implement other steps of the plan, including the actions currently underway, as well as phase 2 action steps as to how some of those green done items can continue to be acted upon, and working with your staff to identify those. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Ms. Gallego, and answer any questions.
Questions? Anyone online with questions or comments? Wonderful. Thank you so much for the update, and thank you to Mayor Giles for representing us well nationally last week. Just a quick update from the city of Phoenix. We have had a significant amount of litigation. We have been sued for being too aggressive and also sued for not being aggressive enough. And both of those courts will result in us making changes to our policies. I would encourage everyone to pay attention because the precedents would impact the entire region. In one court order, we will need to move all of the folks living near the Human Service Campus in public right of way in the next 2 months. And so we would welcome any help that folks can have who are using service providers on the Human Service Campus, because they are very taxed right now. And so the more there are regional solutions that don't involve bringing folks to the Human Service Campus, that would be very helpful, both in making sure we have good solutions and that we comply with the court order in that area.
Mayor Gago, I read an article, maybe many of you saw it, about the former mayor of Bend, Oregon, who now is experiencing homelessness in Bend. And I thought it was a really interesting and compelling article that was very open about his mental health decline and how that had impacted his ability to stay housed. I didn't hear a lot about the mental health component of the homelessness ban. We heard a lot about housing, and I know that's one element. But the more that I've studied and the more that I'm learning and looking at models across the country, Haven for Hope and others, there's a San Diego model as well that is the fully campus type model that allows wraparound services to address all the needs of the individual experiencing homelessness. Can you touch on if there's a comprehensive effort to look at a campus of some sort that would address all those needs in really one location?
I would say right now, the Human Services Campus is kind of that in a nutshell, right? So we have a co-location of 900 shelter beds, mental health resources, behavioral health resources, food, medical, dental, all of those things in one place. But there are certainly challenges to that as well. And so a lot of the shelters that we are standing up are coming with a breadth of resources. Some of those are being co-located there 24/7, and others are definitely bringing in those resources maybe Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or certain days of the week. And so every single shelter that is being stood up right now, we are trying to find ways that we can plug in some of those other partners. And then also part of the plan is really trying to figure out, how do we better coordinate? So how do outreach services make sure that they're connected to behavioral health and mental health resources, substance use? So really, I think from an individual level, we are making sure that the individual has all of the services they need, but then from a systemic level, how do we make that happen too?
Thank you for, I would be really interested, I think, in the continuous update of the sort of comprehensive care that's being examined, or models that might work best for our region, recognizing we have some unique challenges with heat and other things. The only other aspect I'd bring up is I attended a housing symposium. I think a lot of MAG staff was there as well, and it was great to see so many people engaged in the conversation. But one of the things that they really touched on is some of the rules and some of the difficulty that our shelters have. For instance, and I just give this as one example, one of the shelters, you have to be in by 5 p.m., which is prohibitive for somebody who is maybe working. Another component of it was that once the lights are out, no one is allowed to leave their bed. So if they have to use the restroom or something, they're unable to do so. And so just some of the parameters within which we may be expecting, fellow humans, we wouldn't expect that amongst ourselves. And so I just want to flag that as something for us to continue to look at, that when there are shelters who are utilizing public dollars, that there may be a different standard that we might be able to improve the care that we're giving to the unsheltered.
Chair Gallego, Ms. Daniels, staff actually was on the campus yesterday having a focus group with people with lived experience to better respond to needs. And one of the things that has come out is we have an emergency shelter work group that is working to identify how do we better standardize what shelters look like from shelter to shelter, but also what are the different components needed, and then how do funders write that into contracts. So we actually have a meeting next week. So very ironic, but we are working to say, what does this look like? How do we treat people as an individual and what their needs are, but then also as a system, how do we respond to those needs? Thank you.
Mayor Giles, and thank you guys recently purchased a hotel.
We did. And I appreciate Ms. Daniels' question. I think we all understand that mental health really is something we want to get much better at, isn't it? And so this call that I was on representing the Phoenix region with Mayor Gallego a week ago was a White House call, and the program, the rollout of the new program, the White House program on homelessness called All In. So that's I encourage you all to come up to speed on that a little more, and I'm looking forward to staff helping us understand the resources there. The Biden administration has said we've got 6 cities in the United States that we're going to focus on, that we're going to learn how to be better at this, and mental health is the focus of this campaign. And thankfully, the Phoenix region is one of those 6 areas of the country that is going to get an additional measure of assistance on this program. So I just appreciate Ms. Daniels asking the question, and I would love for us to get maybe at our next meeting an update on specifically, directly in response to that, what resources can we access as a region because of this being highlighted by the White House to be part of the All Inside program, and specifically with regard to mental health resources.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll next go to item number 7, which is second deferral, City of Tempe Union Pacific Railroad Tempe South Spur Line Project. It will be presented by Transportation Improvement Program Service Supervisor Patrick Stone and Chase Wallman from the City of Tempe. This item is on the agenda for approval.
Thank you, Nathan. I got that look. I could see he was coming. Again, thank you. Pleasure to be here to present this item. Before I turn it over to Chase, I did want to set the regional policy context on a second deferral. The MAG federal fund programming guidelines, last approved by this regional council in June of 2015, allow member agencies a one-time deferral for a project without justification. They do state, though, if a member agency needs a second deferral, they need to present that deferral through the MAG committee process. As part of that deferral, the agency has to identify 3 items. First being what has caused the deferral. Second, what the agency is doing to mitigate that item. And then third, the agency's ongoing financial commitment to the project. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Chase Wallman with the City of Tempe.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the MAG Regional Council. My name is Chase Wallman, Senior Transportation Planner with the City of Tempe. And thanks for the opportunity today to present Tempe's second deferral request of the Union Pacific Railroad Tempe South Spur Line project. Next slide, please. Just get everyone oriented to where this project is within the region. This project is located on the west part of Tempe. It goes from University Drive to Baseline Road along Farmer, Roosevelt, and Kyrene Road. This bottom left image is showing the southern terminus of the project at at Baseline and Kyrene Road. The yellow dashed lines are showing the regional off-street pathways that connect directly to the project. So at Baseline and Kyrene, this project will directly connect to the Western Canal Path, which continues and has direct connections to other regional off-street pathways going south, such as the Kyrene Canal and the Highline Canal. So directly connecting this project on the south, we could connect along off-street pathways to the town of Guadalupe, City of Chandler, and City of Mesa. And then this top right image is showing the northern terminus of the project. So this is at Farmer Ave and University Drive. Again, the yellow is showing these regional bikeways. Just north of here, we have the Rio Salado Path System, which continues to the west along the Rio Salado South Bank into the city of Phoenix, and to the east to the city of Mesa through Tempe. If you go across the Elmore pedestrian bridge and go to the Rio Salado North Bank path, you'll be able to connect directly to the city of Scottsdale through the Indian Bend Wash path. Also shown on the top right image is some regional transit routes that this project is near. So less than a quarter mile away in this blue dashed line, you see the new Tempe streetcar. This also directly connects to the regional light rail, which continues to the city of Phoenix and Mesa. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this project is to provide a more comfortable, safe, and accessible route along these 3-mile north-south corridor in Tempe. So some of the proposed improvements are protected and buffered bike lanes, two-way cycle tracks. A lot of these improvements have to deal with improving ADA accessibility along the corridor. So some of those examples will be new directional ramps at all the intersections. We also currently have about 1.5 miles of missing sidewalk along this corridor. So as part of this project, we'll be proposing about 1.5 miles of new sidewalks. In addition, as with a lot of the comments we get, is to increase landscaping and street trees and shade along the corridor to make this route more comfortable. So we will be proposing landscaping as well as wayfinding signage and lighting. Next slide, please. So this project's not only important for the city of Tempe, but it's significant for the region as a whole. This project's part of Tempe's Bike It Bike Boulevard system, and the Bike It Bike Boulevard system is a system of bike boulevards. So these are a system of wayfinding signage that identify these bike boulevards that run north, south, and east, west throughout the city. These are along off-street pathways or lower stress streets. So this in particular is going to be a part of what we call the Handlebars Bike It route, which continues from the city of Chandler all the way north to the Crosscut Canal and directly connects to the city of Scottsdale. So this is kind of the midway point of that westernmost Bike Boulevard route. In addition, seeing the success that other cities had in the region with the implementation of cycle tracks, we're excited to propose Tempe's first cycle track along Kyrene Road. So we'll be proposing about 1 mile long cycle track. In addition, this project directly connects to 3 parks. We have the regional Kiwanis Park, which has a wave pool recreation center, multiple sports complexes such as baseball fields and soccer fields. In addition, it connects to a neighborhood park, Dwight Park, which was recently renovated with increased landscaping as well as improving the ADA accessibility at that park. And then finally, this project will connect directly on the north end to the Clark Park, which is currently under construction for a new public pool and recreation center. In addition, on the north end, this project directly connects to downtown Tempe, as well as is in close proximity to the ASU Tempe's main campus. And then finally, this project goes through one of the highest employment densities within the city of Tempe. It goes through an area that the city has identified as opportunity zone. It goes through what's called the Tempe Maker District and Broadway Innovation Hubs. So this is where we have targeted infrastructure investments and are looking at different land uses beyond the prominent industrial uses there. So the inclusion of more mixed uses such as multifamily, residential, commercial, and retail. Next slide, please. So this project was originally intended as a Rails to Trails project programmed for construction in 2020. Initially, the project was proposing to be a mostly off-street pathway within Union Pacific right-of-way. With that, we kicked off the final design for the project in 2018, which included robust public and stakeholder outreach. At the same time, we received revised design direction from Union Pacific, which outlined different design requirements from what we were originally defining within the preliminary design process. As we finished the 30% design, it became apparent that additional design alternatives review and negotiation would be necessary with Union Pacific. The city then requested its first deferral to move the project's construction from 2020 to 2023. As negotiations continued after the first deferral, it became even more apparent that the city would not be able to secure the easements from Union Pacific Railroad that were necessary to build out the project within Union Pacific right-of-way. The city developed multiple alternative alignments, which were presented to our city council. Ultimately, city council recommended an alternative alignment, which pushed the project just 1/4 mile to the west, which culminated in this project being presented today. Following the city council decision for recommending an alternative alignment, we came through this MAG committee process to officially change the project scope from the off-street path railroad alignment to this on-street alignment, which is just 1/4 mile to the west. That was approved by the committee process in 2022. Since then, we have hired a new project consultant who has kicked off the final design for this alternative alignment. About 3 weeks ago, we held our first round of public meetings on that 30% design for this new alignment, and we are making great progress in the design development. Next slide, please. So that brings us to today, our current deferral requests. We are requesting to move the construction funding from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 25. This deferral will allow the city the necessary time to finish the 30% design on this new alignment and contract the remaining design work when additional local funding becomes available, which is in July. This will allow the additional time necessary to hold additional public outreach and prepare the final plan specifications and estimates for the project so that it can be bid for construction. Next slide. The city does remain committed to this project. The project's design is entirely funded with local money. When we exhausted the funding of our original consultant contract, the city programmed the additional funding necessary to complete the design for this new alignment, which will become available in July. In addition, the city continues to reappropriate all the required local match funding and contingency funding necessary to complete the construction of the project. Next slide, please. So with that, we hope to, we built out a very conservative schedule. So we hope to beat this proposed schedule, but nonetheless, we built out this conservative schedule just based off of our recent experience with obtaining the necessary clearances for right-of-way, utility, environmental clearances, or other significant infrastructure projects. So we anticipate awarding the remaining design contract in September of 2023 and finishing the design by September of 2024. Following that schedule, we are targeting to begin construction in the spring of 2025. Next slide. And so just to reiterate our request today, we are requesting to move the project's construction from FY23 to 25. And I thank you again for the opportunity to present and for your consideration in our deferral request.
Thank you, Chase. Do we have any questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Woods. Second from Mayor Dickey. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Staff, can we have a roll call of those participating virtually?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'll go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Beck. Mayor Beck. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Edwards.
My apologies. I couldn't get my phone to unmute. This is Mayor Beck.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Emerson.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Lavalde.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf. Is there anyone that I missed? Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. We next go to item number 8, the draft fiscal year 24 freeway life cycle program. Here to present item number 8 is MAG Transportation Planner Arminta Saeed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members, or good afternoon, I should say, members of Regional Council. As the chair mentioned, I'm here today to provide an overview of our draft fiscal year 2024 freeway lifecycle program annual update. Next slide, please. So quick overview, our freeway lifecycle program, or the FLCP for short, is our management tool for the implementation of freeway and highway projects that are funded through Proposition 400. Every year we go through the process of updating this program with the latest revenue forecast, project cost estimates, as well as any project changes such as in scheduling or scope. And so this item is an overview of the changes that are incorporated into our draft 2024 FLCP. Next slide, please. So on the revenue side, our freeway program is primarily funded through these 3 revenue sources that you see on the screen in front of you. First of all, we've got the dedicated half-cent sales tax, or the percentage of Proposition 400 funding that goes towards freeways and highways. That's also known as the Regional Area Road Fund, or RARF. We also get some state funding from the Highway User Revenue Fund, or from HERF. And then finally, we do get some Federal Highway Administration funding. This is their formula funding that's sub-allocated to the region from ADOT. Next slide, please. So every year, ADOT goes through the process of updating those revenue forecasts. What you see in front of you is the latest forecasts provided that were developed in fall of last year. And here they're being compared against the prior year's forecasts that were incorporated into the fiscal 2023 program. And so what you see with the first two, RARF and HERF, respectively, is an increase of 1% and a decrease of 4%. Both of these reflect a return to the trend that we saw in pre-pandemic times. And then with the FHWA funding, that federal formula funding, we do see a big increase this year. It's because the current draft freeway program incorporates the current federal surface transportation legislation, the Infrastructure and Investments Jobs Act. The fiscal year 23 program incorporated the prior one, the FAST Act. And so that's the reason for that big change there. Next slide, please. And then on the project side, we follow these 3 steps that are listed here in front of you. Firstly, we work with ADOT, who coordinates with their management consultant to provide updated project cost estimates on a biannual basis. The project cost estimates that are reflected in the current fiscal year 24 program were developed in December of last year, and they reflect current market prices for labor and for material. And then we continue to reflect those project budgets in a year of expenditure basis, essentially accounting for that any future inflationary increases. And so the cost construction index, or the CCI, is updated by ADOT again every year. And so what we're using in the draft 24 program is the CCI factors developed in fall of last year. And then finally, we do go through the process of updating the projects if there's any scheduling or scope changes. And if we get to the next slide, I'll provide some detail. So the map shown here in front of you highlights those major project changes that were incorporated into our fiscal 24 program. All of these 4 changes that are highlighted on this map in front of you all align with earlier discussion and direction provided at transportation policy committees earlier this year. And so in February, we discussed and were directed to program final design for the 2 interchanges that you see on the map here on I-10, and then also accommodating that revised scope for the Loop 303 Southern Extension. And then in April of last month, in April, we also discussed programming that financial commitment of $10 million for the I-10 West widening project from SR 85 to Citrus Road. So those are all the major changes incorporated into this draft update. Next slide, please. And then this is again the same map of our freeway system, but just looking at the past year in review, what we see here are projects that are under construction or will be under construction before the end of this fiscal year. And we also see projects that were completed in this fiscal year. And so we have, starting over on the east, the State Route 24 interim freeway opening, the interchange on Loop 202 and Lindsay Road. And then we do expect that the I-10 widening on the west, the GPL widening from SR 85 to Verrado, will be open to traffic by June of this year. Next slide, please. And then this is just, again, the same map, but looking forward at the next fiscal year, there are 2 more projects that we expect to begin construction in that fiscal year. We've got, starting at the south, the Loop 202 widening on Santan from Val Vista to 101. And then at the top, we have, or the north, I should say, we have Loop 101 Agua Fria widening from 75th Avenue to I-17. Next slide, please. And so that concludes an overview of the major changes incorporated into this draft program. Some of the updates that are included in the draft, in the annual update, are contingent on finding of conformity. So that will be put in front of Regional Council for consideration next month. So what we're requesting today is that you approve this draft update contingent on that finding of no conformity. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that important presentation.
Mayor, I would just add into that. I think there was a slide earlier that really illustrates the power of Proposition 400. If you remember, the Regional Area Road Fund is more than 3 times the amount of money that the gas tax raises. So the gas tax, which is now 33 years past its last adjustment, is declining, while the Regional Area Road Fund as a sales tax is increasing, but also in magnitude, it is what is really making this system in Maricopa County work. And I think that sort of informs the urgency that you all have expressed about the importance of extending Proposition 400 to continue this successful freeway program and other transportation programs.
Thank you. Well said. And the Republic piece that our colleagues helped inform mentioned the need for the state to do their part in funding infrastructure at the state level as well. So well said. Mayor Molina.
Yes, I do have a comment. Thank you, Chairwoman. Town of Guadalupe does support the regional projects that are happening to improve traffic and safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, but the town does have reservations before we take any action on this item about the baseline I-10 traffic interchange design project, the number 10. So the design concept report for this project is presently underway, as you just explained. But with its completion in January 2024, the current design efforts include limiting or limiting access from Baseline Road to our businesses along Baseline Road. It also is yet to measure the forecasted delay congestion reduction that we have communicated. And without understanding the direct impact that it has to our businesses, it's difficult for us to move forward. So impeding access to small businesses has a negative impact on our commerce and impacts the sales tax revenues for our small town. It's important to also note that 70% of our tax revenue sales for Guadalupe do come off of Baseline to Priest. So today, before we take action, I'm going to motion that we remove project number 10 from fiscal year 24, the Freeway Life Cycle Program, approve the fiscal year 2024 program without this project, and continue the consideration of including the Baseline TI final design project into the fiscal year life cycle program and postpone it to August regional council meeting. So ADOT, Guadalupe, Tempe, and Phoenix, who will also possibly be impacted, can review and examine the design impacts and perhaps find common ground. So thank you.
Madam Chair, that's a motion. I will definitely make a second to that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So we have a motion from Mayor Molina and a second from Mayor Woods. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'll go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Emersil.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck. Mr. Meck. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you. Item 9 is the approval of the draft MAG fiscal year 24-25 biennial unified planning work program and budget and the member dues and assessments. Here to present is MAG accounting program manager Amy Epley. This item is on the agenda for recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the MAG Regional Council. Good afternoon, and thank you for letting me to present today on MAG's draft budget. Throughout the development process, we have been presenting draft proposals incrementally since January. The draft documents are now complete, and in the agenda packet is the draft of the fiscal year 24 and 25 programs in brief, and the fiscal year 24 and 25 biennial unified planning work program and budget. The draft budget for fiscal year 24 and 25 contains the dues and assessments, which includes the final adjustment to include Gilbert and Paradise Valley in the fiscal year 24 911 assessment. The draft budget also includes the proposed new projects, personnel costs, project budget, and funding estimates, which were outlined to you in February through April. Next slide, please. Here, we are representing the fiscal year 24 total revenues by funding source and total expenditures by division. For fiscal year 24, an approximate $32.7 million of the current federal funds are programmed into the MAG annual budget of approximately $46 million. This makes up approximately 71% of the total funding under the planning direction of MEG, including all current and carry forward federal funding. As a council of governments, MEG performs a variety of functions for its member agencies. The allocation of funds for fiscal year 24 are shown, with the majority being devoted to the transportation division. Next slide, please. This graph represents the 25 total revenues by funding source and expenditures by division. And for fiscal year 25, an approximate 22.8 million of the current federal funds are programmed into the MEG annual budget of approximately 38.1 million. This makes up approximately 60% of the total funding under the planning direction of MEG. The allocation of funds for fiscal year 25 are shown, with the majority being devoted to transportation division. The decrease from the fiscal year 24 to 25 in revenues and allocated expenditures is due to the restricted reserves shown in fiscal year 24, which includes the carry forwards and encumbrances from the previous fiscal year. Next slide, please. This slide represents the fiscal year 24 and 25 total expenditures by category. Personnel costs make up the majority of MEG's expenditures at 50% and 48% respectively, with project consultants following at 26 and 27% respectively. Next slide, please. This is on the agenda for action, and MEG is requesting a recommendation to approve the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 24 and 25 biennial unified planning work program and budget and the member dues and assessments. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any questions or comments? Is there a motion to adopt the budget?
So moved.
Mayor Woods. Second, Mayor Osborne. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Staff, can you take a roll call of members participating virtually?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'll go down the list of members participating virtually. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Beck.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Emerfield.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Meck. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Madam Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your hard work on the financial plan. Number 10 is the nominating committee recommendations. Mayor Corey Woods, Chair of the nominating committee, will provide a report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the nominating committee met at 11 a.m. this morning to recommend the positions for the 2023-2024 Regional Council Executive Committee. The election will take place at the Regional Council annual meeting on June 28th, 2023. So the recommended slate of candidates is as follows. Chair, Mayor Kate Gallego from the city of Phoenix. Vice Chair, Mayor Kevin Hartke from the city of Chandler. Treasurer, Mayor Alexis Hermosillo from the city of El Mirage. And 3 at-large members, Mayor Eric Osborne from the city of Buckeye, Mayor Bridget Peterson from the town of Gilbert, and Mayor John Giles from the city of Mesa, as well as past chair, Mayor Ken Weiss from the city of Avondale. So I want to again thank you, Chair Weiss, for appointing me as chair of the nominating committee, and also want to thank the members of the committee for agreeing to serve. Those members of that nominating committee are Mayor Jerry Van Wilner from the town of Paradise Valley, Mayor Jeannie Dickey from the town of Mountain Hills, Mayor Thomas Schoaf from the city of Litchfield Park, and Mayor Jerry Wires from the city of Glendale. With that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Woods. Do we have any questions or comments? All right, we go to item 11, legislative update. Nathan Pryor, MAG Director of Policy and Government Relations, will be presenting along with John Bullen, MAG Transportation Funding Policy Program Manager. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Regional Council. Before we talk about Prop 400 extension efforts, focus a little time on the state budget. Notably, we saw in this session bipartisan interest in addressing issues around preventing homelessness, as well as creating affordable housing. To that end, Governor Hobbs did sign a state budget on May 11th that did include $150 million for the Housing Trust Fund, as well as $60 million to serve homeless populations. Also turning, next slide, please, to transportation related expenditures. Total statewide, we saw about $805 million appropriated for transportation. Over 330 million of that went to the MAG region. You can see just some of the projects around the region that did get appropriation from state funds supporting those project efforts. And just for the balance of that, about $475 million statewide outside of the MAG region. Next slide, please. Turning to enabling legislation for the extension of Proposition 400, our legislature is currently adjourned until June 12th. You can see some notable quotes as of late from Representative David Cook, House Speaker Ben Toma, and Governor Katie Hobbs related to extension, and that Prop 400 extension needs to happen. Conversations do continue on this front. We'd like to thank Mayor Weiss, Mayor Giles, Mayor Wheatley for having those conversations with the governor's office, as well as legislative leadership and members. As was mentioned earlier, at your place, there's the today's op-ed piece from Arizona Republic, from the editorial board supporting enabling legislation. And again, thank you to Mayor Giles and Mayor Weiss for working with that editorial board. So a lot going on leading up till June 12th. Negotiations do continue. Madam Chair, John Bolin, Ed Zerker, I stand by for any questions on Prop 400 extension.
Any questions? Thank you for your work to move this regional priority and state priority forward. Item 12 is request for future agenda items. Are there any requests by a member of the regional body for an item on the future agenda? We did get one excellent one around, it would be mental health and homelessness. Is that encapsulating it? Great. Anything else? Comments from the committee. Are there any comments or announcements from the membership? Want to congratulate our chairman on the graduation of his daughter. We are now adjourned. The next meeting of the Regional Council will be on Wednesday, June 28th at 11:30 a.m. Thank you for joining us.